Hey everybody, this is TJR
And this is Robert Kinsler.
and 2022. Party's over, out of time, and we're saying hello to 2023. But before we do, we each want to talk about our favorite albums for 2022. Both of us have quite a lot, so we just narrowed it down to five. And Robert, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, as we do this, or after we're done doing this, you're going to be preparing for your blog page, Rock and Roll Truth, which, by the way, can be found at musicworthbuying.com. And you're actually preparing a list of your top 22 albums.
That's right. I have my favorite 22 new studio albums of 2022 that I'm going to be posting, and separately, I'm going to be posting a list of 22 of my favorite reissues, live albums, like special DVD or concert releases, those kind of. So it's a pretty. So between the two lists, I'm going to highlight 44 releases that I fell in love with during the year.
Wow. And so, yeah, check that out at musicworthbuying.com, Robert's blog page, because he covers a lot of stuff that we can't get to here. And by the way, we also have a companion video out around the same time as this one, which is our top reissues of 2022. So check that one out too. And wow, so much music. So let's get started here. We're just going to talk about our top five. I will begin here. And this is in no particular order. They are my top five, but not in any order, except for the last one, the last entry, which is the one I was most excited about for this year. And so here we go. First is Paradise by Healing Potpourri. This is a band that I was not familiar with prior to this album. They have a couple albums out. This was, like many bands, their lockdown album. And it was an album that looked at the fears and frustrations of the time. But instead of coming out with something really serious, they turned all of that fear and frustration into this really just totally groovy sounding 70s influenced electronic pop meets the Beach Boys, meets the Carpenters, meets 70s lounge instrumental music, meets 70s supermarket instrumental music. And if that sounds weird to you, it's because it was. This feeling's older and bigger than me. This was just a weirdly delightful album. Really fun, really weird album. Maybe not for everybody, but I definitely had a great time with it. Next, an album entitled Sage Motel by the Monophonics. This album sits somewhere between 1960s psychedelia and 70s soul music. And it's like a new genre, basically, this combination. It's like giving birth to a new genre. Look what you're doing to me. I've heard some soul albums that played with psychedelics a little bit here and there, but I've never heard the two so well crafted together to where it feels like a new genre, like it does with this one. Next is Entering Heaven Alive by Jack White, and this is very stripped down, elegant, acoustically shaded music that shows influences from Beck, the Allman Brothers, Neil Young, 70s folk rock, Tin Pan Alley, and jazz from the 1940s. It's work for sure. I don't ask myself for nothing anymore. It is familiar and comforting to listen to, but at the same time, very strange and disorienting too. It's been a strange year, don't you think? Next is Three Sides of One by King's X. Sorry, I said that very badly. King's X. This is some of the most cinematic heavy rock music that I have heard in quite a while. I did talk about this album in a previous video where Robert and I did the news. And in that video, I admitted I really hadn't heard this band since their 80s album, Faith, Hope, and Love, an album that I really enjoyed. And I have to admit, I'm gobsmacked by just how much this band has grown and changed musically since I last heard them. I described Faith, Hope, and Love as if the Beatles were a metal band. But Three Sides of One is heavy rock that is, in my opinion, absolutely and completely genre defining. I mean, aside from saying heavy rock, I don't know what else. It's really hard to describe this band's music except to call it very cinematic. There is just so many influences going on in this, and like I said, really genre defined, and I love it for that reason. So those are my first four. Now I'm going to talk about my number one. This, like I said, none of this has been in numeric order except for this one. It's at number one. This is the album, and I should say album project, that got me the most excited here in 2022. I Am the Moon, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 by the Tedeschi Trucks Band. Like a lot of bands, they were forced off the road by lockdown. And as a result, they went into the studio and began their most ambitious studio project ever. A 4-album, 4-film, there are 4 accompanying films for each album, project. Inspired by the 12th century poem, Layla and Majnun, by Nisami Ganjavi. If I mispronounce anything, my apologies. This is, of course, the same poem that inspired the classic song Layla by Derek and the Dominoes. And the genesis of this album occurred when, after being forced off the road 2 months later, band member Mike Madison sent an email to fellow band members Derek and Susan Trucks, Gabe Dixon, and Tyler Greenwell, suggesting that they read Ganjavi's 100-page poem. Now, part of the reason for this was because the band had previously recorded a live performance of that original classic album by Derek and the Dominoes. And after reading the original work, Madison stated that he realized there are many things going on from different perspectives, and proposed in his email to the other band members revisiting this material as both a band and as writers. And what has emerged is an enjoyable magnum opus that stretches more than 2 hours of music. On these 4 albums, the band explores new creative musical territory, but they also stay true to their earthy blues rock roots as well. I loved this so much that I picked up the limited edition box set version.
I am the moon, you are the sun, and look at you.
Wow. That, and it's criminal for me to admit it. I haven't heard this collection yet, TJ, although I've seen the Tedeschi Trucks Band a few times live, and they are phenomenal. So I definitely need to wrap my ears around this collection and or watch the film. But yeah, thanks for bringing that to my attention, and I'll make sure I check that out.
If you watch the films, you're listening to the albums at the same time, so you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I preferred actually listening to the albums first and just hear them, and then of course I went to the films. But you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by just pulling up the films on YouTube.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, the albums are only about 30 minutes in length, roughly, which I think was a good choice to keep them short. That way you digest it over a month's time. Then a month later, you start with the second one. And I think that's the perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
Is to listen to one, wait for over a month, go to the next one if you haven't heard it yet.
Yeah.
But,
very exciting. It's a great list. Sounds like there's a lot of ambitious music that's really connected with you deeply this year. And that's kind of how I feel about my list as well, that I'm going to get to now. I'm going to kick things off with an album that we're both familiar with, TJ, because we've talked about it. And that's the latest album from the band Dawes, which is titled Misadventures of Doomscroller. And in my mind, Dawes continues to be an incredible light in the modern rock universe. They defy easy categorization, and they up the ante with each release. They started kind of as an Americana, kind of folk rock band in the vein of maybe the Eagles, and they've grown into to explore other areas. On their latest album, I mean, there's even times where they're kind of going into Steely Dan territory, where they're kind of incorporating jazz into their rock.
Scared to show our faith in the ghost in the machine.
And their folk rock sound. So just a really good album. And I think Dawes is a great band, and I'm glad that their latest album is on my list.
Yeah, same here. I really like this album too. This is the first time I've heard you talk about Dawes in the past, but this is the first time I've ever picked up one of their albums, and I've enjoyed it from start to finish. I love the Steely Dan and jam band vibes that you're talking about that I got off this album. Yeah, loving it from start to finish.
The next album I'm going to highlight is from the artist titled Bird Streets, and the album is titled Lagoon. Bird Streets is actually the moniker for singer-songwriter John Brodier, and I'm probably butchering his name, and my apologies. And this is the second album from Bird Streets, and I describe this as an album of luxurious and literate songs aimed at separation, rumination, regret, and recurrence.
I get high and say goodbye to all my cares in the world.
And the artistic scope of the dozen-track collection is elevated by some of the notable artists that join him along the way, and that includes Amy Mann, Jody Stevens, who is is the only surviving member of Big Star, Ed Harcourt, John Davis, and Buddy Judge. And he was a member of the Grays, kind of a legendary power pop group that did, I believe, only one full-length album. But this is a really solid album. So many good songs on here, and I think you shared with me too. You've got to hear this album as well, right, TJ?
Oh yeah, I did get a chance to listen to it here. I heard elements of the Beatles. I heard elements of Bowie. I heard elements of 60s and 70s. But I also heard what was uniquely them as well. I especially enjoyed the Eastern sounding track, Leave No Traces. I really enjoyed the grunge-inspired song entitled Burnout. And I say inspired because, well, it had that grunge feel. They managed to include some very soft, pretty instruments into it as well, which I've never heard before. I was surprised by the jazz horns at the beginning of his appearing act. The solo jazz horns, I thought was really great. This is a band that really likes to paint with different colors, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, and I feel the same way about this album. And then moving on, my next new studio album that I want to highlight is the latest from Michael Ubaldini, and that album is titled Rabbit Foot Carnival. And he returned. Michael has released a slew of great albums going back many years, and I'm always amazed at the level of depth and that he reaches in his songcraft. On this latest album, he's basically fusing roots rock, Americana, country blues, folk, and even gospel across the 14 songs. And I think that this is just a great album. And I want to particularly kind of highlight the irresistible rocker titled Lazarus Blues.
Into destiny rose like Lazarus from the dead. Oh, listen, people, to what I say.
And it's just a great song that it's like ear candy. You cannot stop playing the song, and you can't get it out of your head, and that's a good thing.
Of course, I'm no stranger to Michael Ubaldini. I have most of his albums. He's an exceptional songwriter, and he has done folk albums that I like. And I'm not a fan of folk music, but mostly I appreciate him as a rock and roller. And I'm glad to hear him just returning back to just some boot kick and rock and roll with a really solid band, which is what we have on this album.
And then moving on, the next album I want to highlight, the album is called Rhythm of the World, and it's from a group called the Cowsills.
No matter how you try, it seems so hard. It's up to you this time to push your card.
Now, the Cowsills are a musical family, and they released a series of popular singles and albums in the late 1960s and early 70s before they went on hiatus way back in 1972, which is 50 years ago. But people should note that the Cowsills were the inspiration for the 1970s TV series, The Partridge Family. So their legacy is definitely intact, not only through their music, but that they gave rise to the idea for that show.
Hello world, here's a song that we're singing.
Wow, I had no idea. Please continue. I
Yeah,
have to know more now.
So they did reunite to record new albums in 1978 and 1993. But I will tell you, Rhythms of the World is a true triumph. This is an amazing 11-song album that's filled with songs that they truly have sharp songcraft that kind of draw comparisons with the best groups of the 1960s and 70s. It's not a stretch, TJ, for me to say that the songs on this album would be ones that you might hear on classic albums from the Byrds, from Badfinger, the Turtles, or the Mamas and the Papas. So if you're a fan of great folk rock that was recorded in the 1960s, check this album out. You will not be disappointed. Just some great songs like Lend a Hand and Try to Believe It Too. Just a fantastic return from the Cowsills.
You learn something new every day, and I just did.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to wrap up my list of 5 new great studio albums. Like I said, these are all going to be featured on my best of column that's going to be being published. But that's the artist's name. Her name is Ruthie Foster. The title of the album is called Healing Time, and this is her 9th studio album. And whereas her other albums perhaps were more heavily in the blues genre, this one finds her definitely in a soul mode.
I was listening to my heart. I've been so searching ever since.
There's the gospel mining, Feels Like Freedom. It brings chills to me when I listen to it. Just amazing. There's also an anthem on here called Soul Searching, and it's an explosive celebration of love. And for those that do love the blues, check out What Kind of Fool. And on that song, she uses her full vocal range. But what I want to highlight is she shows a nuanced and really artistic approach when she does these recordings. So a lot of times my complaint with some of the modern singers is that, yeah, they have amazing voices, but there's just too much bombast on it. It's just like it's pummeling you over the head. Ruthie does not do that. She really artistically tackles each song and gives it just what it needs. And she's an artist of impeccable artistry. And not that she sounds like Florence plus a Machine and Florence Welch there, but she has that approach where she really artistically gives a song, maybe I already said this, but just what it really deserves and what it needs to make it the best it can be and to make it really connect with you emotionally. And just a great, great artist.
You've intrigued me. I don't think I've ever heard this artist before. I don't think I have. Possibly, but I'm kind of doubting it. So I'm going to want to just look her up and just try to listen to a few tracks. But yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by what you're saying here. So much great new music. Not long ago, you and I did a video, in fact, just a few weeks ago, entitled Music is Still Good and We'll Prove It, where we discussed, I think maybe 5 to 6 albums that were modern, or modern music albums that we feel prove that modern music is still good. And we got a lot of good response. And so we both have, just this year alone, we both have so many other albums we could talk about for this year. But Robert and I are going to do some more of those Music is Still Good videos. They'll be shorter because we'll each just be discussing one album. But we're going to do more of those. We would like to do more of those. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up in 2023, where we're going to be discussing, modern releases. Some of them might be just like out right at the moment, and some of them might go back over the last couple year or so. But modern music albums that we feel proves that music is still good, and because it is. It may not get on the radio, it may not attract the algorithm, but it's there and it's good. And so we hope you'll join us for those. And with that said, please share with us now your top albums for 2022. You don't have to limit yourself to 5 like we did. You can put as many as you want or as little as you want, and tell us what you liked about them. If you want to also, that helps, because you never know, we might get interested and check it out ourselves. But also, you'll be promoting it to everybody who reads the comments too. And the good music's out there. We just have to share it with each other and let each other know and make it happen. Robert, thanks so much. I can't believe it. You've got 22 albums on this article you're going to be posting soon.
And I was just thinking, TJ, while you're saying that, how crazy it that I have 22 really good titles, and I mean they're really solid, good titles, and I haven't even got to the Tedeschi Trucks Band and the King's X titles, and those are 2 you've previously mentioned, and I am going to make sure I check those out. And if I don't get to them before the end of the year, I can still feature them in my column and say, hey, I missed these, and highlight them and kind of spread the word. But those sound really, all your selections sound really good, and I'm looking forward to checking those out.
Thank you. Yeah. And so everybody, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. Those are the YouTube things that we always ask you to do. Patron supporters, we thank you too. Patron supporters receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel, and they get their names in the credits. If you're interested in being a patron supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR, the original Make a Monthly Pledge. Any amount you want to pledge is a huge help, even if it's just $1. It's a huge help. Thank you so much. And if you can't be a patron supporter, we understand. Just click like, watch these videos to the very end, and share them with anyone you think might be interested in them. Robert, looking forward to 2023. I'm sure you are too.
Oh, definitely.
And we're looking forward to making more videos with you folks. We want to wish you all a happy new year and wish you peace and prosperity in the new year and good health. We'll see you in the next video, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.